Welcome back to Crawford-Clark Close-Up and our season of Pixar reviews in the lead up to this summer's The Incredibles 2. The premise for Pixar's 16th feature film was clear. What if 65 million years ago the asteroid missed and didn't wipe out the dinosaurs, so humans and dinosaurs would have to coexist harmoniously? Welcome to the vastly underrated The Good Dinosaur. 2015 was a daring year for Pixar. In their 20th anniversary year since the release of Toy Story in 1995, the creatives decided to release two feature films, the first of which was the Oscar-winning Inside Out, with director Pete Docter at the helm, and it's widely considered to be one of Pixar's best in recent years. So, how to follow that success? The Good Dinosaur proved to be the answer, but from the get-go, it wasn't an easy production. The story stayed on the Pixar floor for years, going through different pitches and eventually ditching co-director Bob Peterson and original voice cast Bill Hader and John Lithgow for the now finished product. Peter Son, who has provided voices for Pixar over the years, most recently as Uzma Kappa's Squishy in Monsters University, took over creative control of the film in 2014, and the story was properly developed. The Good Dinosaur was also a western in its early stages before director Son decided to take the story back to basics. Director of photography Sharon Callahan and director Son made the creatives watch Heaven's Gate and The Black Stallion for inspiration for the desired look and feel of the film. Those strong emotions of loss, isolation and survival that are all just narrated with images rather than dialogue. And director Son also went back to one of Disney's earliest features, Bambi, to capture the emotional resonance required for the film. From the very opening, this is undoubtedly the most photorealistic animation Pixar have ever produced. The scenery looks breathtaking and so lifelike, and there's a reason behind this. The backgrounds in the film are actually based on real locations. As director Son explains, the ambition wasn't photorealism, it was to make a world that was beautiful and dangerous at the same time. We really wanted to make the outdoors feel huge. So Pixar's technical department worked with real geological data from the US government to create 13,000 square miles of wilderness. It's an incredible achievement, and for trivia fans, the server space taken up at Pixar by the film was 300 terabytes, 10 times that used for Inside Out. We open The Good Dinosaur millions of years after the asteroid missed Earth, as we see Mama and Papa, voiced by Frances McDormand and Jeffrey Wright, observing the hatching of their eggs. Playful Libby and Buck are the first baby dinosaurs to hatch from the eggs in the barn, leaving Arlo as the last and smallest of the three to emerge from the largest shell. Arlo starts the story as a very scared, timid young dinosaur, desperate to prove his mettle in the big world and earn his mark, which is something that all the other members of his family have already managed to do. Arlo is tasked by his papa to make his mark by killing the critter who has been helping itself to their food supply. When Arlo meets the critter, it's a feral little boy, a human, and he can't do it, so he ends up letting it go, much to his papa's disdain. It's tough love now as Arlo's papa takes him out to try and trace the critter's tracks in a storm. Constantly telling his son to keep up, Papa looks back to discover Arlo wounded and struggling on the wet rocks, and quickly turns to apologise for being so hard on his son. It's a case of too little too late, as Arlo's papa gets swept away in the storm downstream and dies. Back on the farm, the family are struggling without Papa. Arlo sees that the critter has returned to the farm to take their food, so he chases it, bent on vengeance for the death of his father, which he believes wouldn't have happened if he had only killed the critter in the first place, as his papa suggested. Arlo ends up following the river into the mountains and is knocked unconscious in the current, washing up ashore, lost. This is where Arlo's journey really begins. Arlo is in a lot of pain, with the critter nowhere to be seen, but when he finds the critter again, his strength is renewed, and he soon comes to realise that it might be useful having this brave, feisty critter around. Arlo names him Spot, and the two form a bond. Brothers Jeff and Michael Danner, fresh from their Oscar-winning efforts on the score to 2012's Life of Pi, are in charge of the film's score, and it's one of the most beautiful compositions in the Pixar canon. It's also the first time that there has been more than one composer on a Pixar feature. They would be denied an Oscar nomination for their beautiful score, but would win the BMI Film Music Award for the picture in 2016. In a poignant scene midway through the film, in trying to teach Spot about family, Arlo learns that Spot is estranged from his own family. Spot covers two of his family in stick form with earth, and Arlo does the same for the stick figure representing his father. It's a touching moment that's beautifully animated and furthers the bond between the two of them. It's in the film's middle act, where Arlo is befriended by a group of dinosaurs and pestered by a flock of birds, that the pace falters somewhat, and you might get easily distracted. But then we get a great moment where Arlo, out in the storm entangled in the brush, sees his papa, who comes to Arlo and encourages him to get up and help Spot. It's all in Arlo's imagination, yet nevertheless it's a moment that could easily have come from Disney in The Lion King with Simba and Mufasa, and it's a wonderful reflective moment for this character, who decides to persevere on his journey. When he sees Spot in danger in the river, Arlo plucks up the courage to save Spot from the river in the way he couldn't save his dad, but ultimately Arlo makes his mark in the following scene. Exhausted, the pair are close to Arlo's farm when Spot is reunited with his family. Arlo having to say goodbye to him and drawing another circle in the earth to demonstrate to Spot that he's now back with his family and they no longer need each other is a significant turning point for Arlo, who learns to let go and knows he needs to get home, and it's beautiful. It doesn't stop the scene being achingly sad though, as Spot doesn't understand at first why Arlo is nudging him back towards his family. No dialogue is spoken, but it's obvious that Arlo and Spot are both as sad as each other to part company. Accompanied by the elegant Goodbye Spot cue from the Dana brothers, this is our Crawford-Clark close-up standout scene. We end the story with Arlo returning home to the farm, reunited with his mother, brother and sister, and he can finally make his mark next to the one his father made and complete the story. A story that's seemingly straightforward, yet fundamental in its quest for survival and growth, that's incredible to look at and highly emotive from the first frame until the last. Some of the best central Pixar characters have a buddy relationship, and Arlo and Spot are just another addition to the canon. Arlo himself is based on the movements of an elephant who, according to Rob Thompson, directing animator at Pixar, walk with grace and purpose. Spot, with no dialogue, emotes through his eyes, and the main inspiration for the look of the character came from a famous National Geographic photo by Steve McCurry, known as Afghan Girl. Arlo and Spot, in its basest form, is a story of a boy, Arlo, and his dog, Spot. The Good Dinosaur, released in November 2015 in both the UK and US, had the unfair disadvantage of being compared by critics to their earlier release of the year, the Oscar-winning Inside Out, and it's impossible to compare the two. Just like any two other Pixar efforts, for argument's sake, let's take Ratatouille and WALL-E. They are two of the best from the studio, but where do you start in trying to compare them? Each feature release from Pixar has a personality of its own. That The Good Dinosaur has been the least successful Pixar film to date is a crying shame, as this is one of the most technically confident and gorgeous of all the studio's output. That it's quite an emotional and distressing story at times for young children may have resulted in the film not sitting favourably with audiences, but had it been released earlier in the decade, around the time of Cars 2 or Brave, it would surely have been better received by both critics and audiences. It's also baffling that after Cars, Cars 2 and Monsters University, this is the fourth Pixar feature not to win an Oscar in any category. It was, however, nominated by the Golden Globes for Best Animated Motion Picture, and the film did win the Annie for Outstanding Achievement in Animated Effects. All in all, it's Sweet 16 for Pixar with this adventure, a short story about companionship and growth with incredible cinematography and a knockout score. The Good Dinosaur certainly doesn't sit on the bottom of our Pixar pile. From Crawford-Clark Close-Up, we say...
Alrighty then.
So, what are your thoughts on Pixar's 16th adventure? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, whether you agree or disagree with our review, and please subscribe to the channel if you like this review. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, and you can send us an email with your suggestions for future reviews on the channel. Crawford-Clark Close-Up at gmail.com. Not too many more Pixar feature films to review now. Up next, after the last 2 original stories, Pixar will return with a sequel to their 2003 classic Finding Nemo, centering on fan favourite Dory. Thanks for watching, and until next time, that's a wrap.